Right.
right? So
Right.
they'll answer no just so they can see what the results are.
Right.
It's like they can't help themselves. You know what I
Right.
mean? And that's
'Cause
what
they
this is.
actually,
This is
yeah.
cool.
And what we do, there's some things in the gameplay of it. The reason we don't have people give their personal answer is because in testing that, we found that it became very contentious. I mean, we have a rule at our company not to fire anyone between Thanksgiving and New Year's.
Yeah.
And it's just there's a lot of reasons for it, but the basic reason is, and you get to do this when you've been running a company for 40 years. I don't
Yeah.
feel good about it. I
Yeah.
won't enjoy my vacation. We went to factories in China and we worked on getting them to have better conditions for their workers. And even if we only changed 3 factories,
Yeah.
um, that's a contribution.
It's a lot
And
of lives, man. That's a lot of lives.
we had a game called based on Dick Tracy, the Dick Tracy movie with Warren
Mhm.
Beatty and Madonna, and it didn't sell as well as we wanted. And so we and we've I've decided that what I want to do is create the first board game and puzzle museum in the United States. There are some museums that have parts of them that have board games,
Yeah.
but there's nothing fully dedicated. And if I can pull this off, it'll be a great contribution,
Yeah.
for kids and people to go and understand more how vibrant the board game industry is right now.
Did you know there's a technology that's actually an app on your phone that uses sound waves to tell your brain what you want your brain to do? We had a young man that was on a guest on our podcast, the Mike Litton Experience, who had a traumatic brain injury. He was sleeping 3 hours a night. He's using NewCalm now and he's sleeping more. Go to newcalm.com, Mike15 promo code. Newcalm.com, promo code Mike15 for an extra 15% off. Go today.
Welcome to the Mike Litton Experience podcast. Everyone has a story, and our passion is to help them tell it. Mike is passionate about being a father, a teacher, a realtor, an investor, and a leader. And now, introducing the host of the Mike Litton Experience, Mike Litton.
Bob Moog, thank you so much for being our guest on the Mike Litton Experience. I'm super excited for our time together. And like we talked about before we hit record, everybody has a story, and our passion is to help them tell it. So, with your permission, we're going to start with where you were born, go up to today, and then we want to talk about this new game that you have at ugames.com. And let's talk about board games and some of the cool things that you guys are working on. I'm super excited to do this. Thanks again for being here.
Great. Thank you, Mike. I'm looking forward to it too. It's fun. It's fun to talk about the journey. Our company, University Games, was started on April 1st, 1985. So this is our 40th anniversary. And as a co-founder of the company, it's really exciting because I don't usually take time to think about the journey. And this is
Yeah.
a great opportunity for me to share that journey with people.
Yeah, I'm super excited about this. So where were you born?
Uh, I was born in St. Louis, Missouri, and I'm a fourth generation Missourian.
Mhm.
And was went to public high school at Clayton High School, and then when I was 18, I moved to Colorado to go to
Mhm.
college at Colorado College, and then when I graduated, I spent uh, 5 or 6 years uh, just goofing around, doing
Mhm.
not what would be considered not career jobs, but having a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Uh, do you want me to talk about that a little bit? I mean,
Yeah, so
yeah,
so I just have a couple of questions. So
sure.
growing up in St. Louis, what was your favorite thing about growing up there?
Well, my favorite thing was definitely the Cardinals.
Yeah.
I was growing up, the Cardinals were really good,
Yeah.
and when I was very young, they went to the 1964 World Series and beat the Yankees.
Yeah.
And then I was old enough to actually go to the 1967 and 68 World Series, and it was fantastic. That
Yeah.
was my favorite thing about growing up in St. Louis was the Cardinals and getting to see Kurt Flood and Lou Brock and
Mhm.
Bob Gibson and see those guys play. And then the incredibly deep uh, family values that we had in St.
Mhm.
Louis that are very different in California.
Yeah.
Uh, is something that I didn't appreciate at the time, but when I think back was a really good thing about St. Louis.
Absolutely. So growing up, who was the most influential person to you?
Well, overall, it would have been my father would have been the
Mhm.
most influential, but there's certain in every life you have certain pivot points or certain
Mhm.
epiphanies. And I had a teacher who taught American history.
Mhm.
Um, his name was Mr. Morrison, and he was incredibly influential to me in molding my worldview and having me understand how important history is to understanding today and understanding the future. And I think because of him, I became a history and political science major, and I still keep in touch with him. So
That's cool.
he was very influential.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So when you graduate high school, you make a decision to go to school in Colorado at Colorado College in Colorado Springs.
Mhm.
Why did you make the decision to go there?
Well, I was a little bit nerdy.
Mhm.
I th I my view of the world at 18 was different than most of my friends in that I felt that this was the first time in my life that I got to make all the decisions. Up
Mhm.
until then, I didn't get to pick where I lived. I didn't get to really
Mhm.
pick what clothes I wore. I didn't really get to pick what I ate because I ate whatever my mom bought or whatever she cooked for dinner. And now I was gonna get to pick where I wanted to go, and my parents had saved money for me to go to college. I was very fortunate that they
Mhm.
had money, and so they had both gone to college in the East Coast, and they said, "Wherever you wanna go, provided we can afford it, you can do it." So I researched over 100 colleges, and
Mhm.
my criteria were very specific. I wanted a small liberal arts college that had under 5,000 students. I wanted co-ed dorms, which in
Mhm.
1974 was a new thing.
Mhm.
Um, I wanted good, strong intramurals. I wasn't good enough to play, college sports, but I loved participating.
Mhm.
Uh, and I wanted it to be a place where it was considered um, competitive, but in the college guidance books, it was highly competitive, not most competitive. I didn't want to go somewhere where everybody there had been straight A students in college, if I could even get in.
Yeah.
Uh, and I wanted it to be anywhere in the United States other than Missouri or a state touching Missouri. So I eliminated Missouri and every state touching Missouri, and Colorado was kind of the next place.
Right. It's
And
just on the other side of Kansas.
right. Kansas, I wasn't gonna go to because it touched Missouri. So Colorado was there, and Colorado College had something no other school in the country had. They had a very special curriculum where you only take one course at a time.
Oh.
And what I believed was if I could pick the courses, I could be a good student,
Mhm.
and it worked. I went from having a 2.6 grade point average in high school to having be dean's list in college because
Wow.
I that's a huge change,
Yeah.
and I did it by, finding a program where I only had to take one course at a time, and
Mhm.
so I would immerse myself in geology or
Yeah.
immerse myself in astronomy or, English literature, whatever it was, whereas in high school, I had 5 courses at once, and
Mhm.
they were pulling me in a lot of different ways, and I just was too social to really put time into it, so I kinda came into my own academically in college.
That's cool. What was your major at Colorado College?
Political science and history. I did a double major.
So
Yeah.
and you were inspired by your teacher in high school.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
cool. That's really cool.
yeah.
So you graduate, you spend 5 or 6 years, and at some point, you end up moving to San Francisco. Talk about that for a second, because not everybody in St. Louis is looking to move
Right.
to San Francisco,
No.
you know what I mean?
Yeah. What happened was I those 5 years in between, I did a bunch of interesting business things for with no career plan. I worked for a company that was importing an ale from Australia, and I was in charge of sales and distribution of Cooper's Ale. Then I worked for a company. Then my father hired me to be a trip director in the Caribbean, and after doing that, I got some other companies to hire me. So I was, for about 6 months, I was in the Caribbean in St. Martin and St. Bart's at 23 years old.
Oh,
Running,
rough
running, it
duty.
was tough, running trip. Then, then I got hired by a guy to help him sell uh, a arthritis cure made from green-lipped mussels in New Zealand. It was called
Mhm.
Neptone, and it turned out he was like 30 years too early. The company didn't do well, but now there's a thing on TV you might see called Omega XL. It's
Yeah.
the same product,
Oh my
but
gosh.
they're making lots of money off of it, and we
Yeah,
were
they
in.
are.
And then I did something that probably was foreshadowing, my future. I talked a professor. I decided to go out to California, and when I got
Mm,
there, I talked a professor at the Stanford Business School into letting me audit his class. And through that, I met the president of a brewery in Oregon that was owned by the Pabst Brewing Company,
mm,
and they hired me, and I moved up there and worked for them. And after 10 months, I got an opportunity to move to Milwaukee to be part of Pabst, kind of their corporate staff. And I
yeah.
talked to this president and said, you know, I, I've fought to not to be in Colorado, and now I'm in California, and I don't want to really go back to Wisconsin. What would you do if you were me? And he said, if I were you, I'd go to business school and get a master's in business administration.
Mm,
And I was 26 at the time,
mhm.
and so I applied and was fortunate enough to get into Stanford, and so I went and got an MBA at Stanford, and that's why I've been in California all this time.
Oh, good for you. That's awesome. Stanford's gorgeous. What a
Yeah,
beautiful campus.
beautiful. Yeah.
So I mentioned to you that my son lives not far from there.
Right,
So
in
every
San
time we
Jose.
go up and visit him, I
Yeah.
go out to Cobb Field and walk the track.
Yeah.
I just love it. That place
Yeah,
is really cool.
that's a great field, and it's beautiful there.
Yeah, it's really cool.
I
So
still go.
you graduate from Stanford. Where do you go from there?
Well, it was interesting, because I hadn't had business school as a goal. I hadn't been an undergraduate business or economics major, and I
Right.
hadn't and worked for a consulting firm or an investment bank in New York. So I was a little bit of an outlier, and I decided I did not want to go the corporate route. I wanted
Yeah.
to start my own company. So when I graduated, I went and I worked for about 4 or 5 months for Nolan Bushnell. Nolan Bushnell
Mhm.
is known as the father of video games, and
Yeah.
he started Atari and Chuck E. Cheese Pizza Time Theater, and he was doing a series of trivia games, because Trivial Pursuit was really popular then. This is
Yep.
1984,
It really
and
was. Yeah.
so I got to he hired me. They hired me on a contractor basis to develop trivia games for them. And
Mhm.
I even have in the room one of the ones we did. I'm trying to see if I can see it. I don't see it right now, but it was called Business
Mhm.
Trivia. That's what
Yeah.
I did. And then after that, I had another friend who I'd known from Colorado College, and he was a CPA, and
Mhm.
he said he wanted to leave Price Waterhouse and he wanted to start a company. And so I wasn't doing anything. I said, let's start a company. And we each had $10,000 that we were able to scrape together. And we started University Games
Mhm.
uh, on April 1st, 1985 with
Wow.
$20,000. Yeah.
Wow. And you're getting ready to celebrate your 40th anniversary.
Yep. Well,
How cool is that?
April 1st of this year will be 40 years old, and he left the company about 10 years ago and sold his stock, his ownership in the company. He lives in New Zealand now, and he's retired, and he's having, he's living the life.
Yeah.
Uh, but I've stuck with it because for him, it was always just running a business. For
Yeah.
me, there's a passion in inventing and developing games, and
Yeah.
so I love doing that. And when you are the head of the company, if you invent a game, it actually makes it to market, versus most people who have to shop their game and try to get someone to publish it for
So, question for you.
them.
What's the single most important thing you've learned owning this company for 40 years?
I would say, the most important thing I've learned I mean, there's so many, but that if you want to survive in business, you have to watch your cash flow. And
Yeah.
if you don't understand the relationship between money going out and money coming in, you're going to always need more money.
Yeah.
Because what I didn't understand, even after going to business school, I didn't understand that more companies go out of business as they're growing than go
Hmm.
out of business when they're shrinking.
Yeah.
Uh, People seem to know how to tighten their belts. They seem to know how to say, okay, sales are going down, so we need to lay off people. They
Right.
seem to know they seem to know how to adjust to bad times. What people don't know how to do is adjust to good times.
Yeah.
And so many, many, many times I've seen colleagues of mine in other companies be really confused at how their sales are increasing by 50 to 100% a year and they have no money
Yeah.
and they're getting broke and they don't know it because of the cash flow needs of growth.
Right.
And so that's probably the thing I've learned more than anything else, more than anything about product, more than anything about distribution. I mean, the second thing I would say is that in running a business, distribution is more important than how good the product is
Yeah.
for most consumer products. That I would also say.
Yeah. Totally
Yeah.
agree with that.
Yeah.
So going to Stanford to get your MBA, what was your favorite thing about attending Stanford?
Oh, that's easy. Uh, how much fun it was in my late 20s, and 26 to 28,
Hmm.
to not have the burden and the responsibility of having a job
Yeah.
and just having 2 years to just have fun.
Yeah.
I made my best friends of my life I made at that time. They gave me an award at the end of the 2 years for being um, the student out of the entire class who contributed most to the community.
Yeah.
And normally, that award would be for contributing things like starting some diversity club,
Hmm.
or running a cleanup of the school, or starting a recycling program. For me, it was I entertained people by building a horseshoe pit and starting a horseshoe club,
There
and
you
I had
go.
beer tasting, and I organized trivia games where everyone could go into an auditorium and play trivia. And I brought in some stand-up comedians. So my stuff was all social, and it
Yeah.
was all about people getting to know each other better and enjoying each other while they were in this fairly intense academic environment. But
Yeah.
my best memories are how much fun I had and how great it was not to have the responsibilities of working. And the second thing would be the incredible faculty, friends that I made, and the people. Nothing about what I learned would
I guess.
be the top five things. Yeah.
So I'm going to ask you something that I probably shouldn't ask you then. What's the number one most important thing you learned attending
Okay.
Stanford?
Um, I'll tell you, it's an interesting question because most of the people in my class going in would have said, the reason I'm here is I want to learn how to run a business. I
Yeah.
want to learn how you run a business. But leaving, many of us said, and I would say the most important thing I learned was that it's all about the people.
Yeah.
It's not about finance. It's not about accounting. It's not about operations. It's about understanding how to hire the right people and
Yeah.
how to work with those people. That's
Yeah.
the most important thing I learned. And I took several classes on that. The class where I learned the most that I use in my job was a negotiations class that I took.
Yeah.
Um, the benefit in business of understanding how to negotiate and being a good negotiator is huge for any service or product business. And that would be the course that is the most applicable to what I do.
Yeah. So you're getting ready, like we talked about, in a couple of months to celebrate your 40th anniversary being in business.
Yes. Yes, we're actually already started celebrating it. We had our first celebration. I plan to do a lot of partying to
You
celebrate.
should. You should.
When
You
you have a
earned it.
game company, we're not an insurance company.
Right.
I want to celebrate this with all the people that have gotten me here and all the people that have helped. But we had our first celebration in England last week. We have a subsidiary in the UK, and I went over there for a trade show, and first thing they did was every day at 3 in the afternoon, they would have 40th anniversary cupcakes, and they would bring in 40 cupcakes, and it would be for our staff and our
Yeah.
customers and whoever came by. And then one night we went out to a really fancy Asian fusion restaurant and had champagne, and they all we decided to play a very warped version of 20 questions. There were
Mhm.
10 people there, and they each got to ask me 2 questions that I agreed to answer about the 40 years.
Mhm.
And they came up with funny things, and some of them were serious things, but it was a real fun evening. Our next celebration is going to be the end of February in New York at the New York International Toy Fair.
Yeah.
Then I fly to Australia, where we have another subsidiary, and they're having a party there. And then April 1st, we'll have a party for all the employees. And then in May, we're having a party for all our shareholders, friends, all the people that have been around for 40 years. And we're renting out a big club. And I'm going to try to get some kind of a name act from 1985, to play. So we're going to have a big party with music.
So when you're in Australia, is the co-founder coming over to visit? Will they
Yeah,
be
he'll
there?
be there. He'll come from
Yeah.
New Zealand. He lives in
Yeah.
New Zealand. He'll fly over and visit.
That'll be so cool.
Yeah, we're very good friends. His daughter works for us, and I'm godfather to one of his kids. So he and I are still very, very close.
So I cannot help but ask you this because I'm just naturally curious, as you can tell, right?
Mhm.
What was the single greatest question you were asked in that sort of warped 20 questions thing?
Someone said to me, "Can you describe your second day in business?" And I said, "What do you mean?" And they said, "Well, April 1st, you started the company. You
Uh-huh.
moved into the offices.
April Fool's Day, by the way.
April Fool's Day. But on April 2nd, what happened? Like,
Yeah.
there you were, you had no products,
Yep.
you had no customers. How they were really curious, how do you start a business?
Yeah.
And what do you do? And they wanted to know very specifically how I was allocating my time and what I was doing. And I don't really remember the second day, but I remember the first month. And so my answer was kind of a summary of, what happened in the first month. And I said, basically, I did some or all of these things on the second day. That was the best question. A lot of the questions were, what's your favorite product? And what do you regret most about the business and stuff like that. But the question of what did you do on the second day, I
Mhm.
thought was a really, really good question. It was interesting, and everyone enjoyed the answer.
Yeah. So looking back on 40 years of being in business, what's the one thing you're the most proud of?
We had a legal suit about 6 months ago, and I got deposed. And so they told me that before you answer a question in a deposition, it's very important to take a breath and really think about the question, and don't
Mhm.
just sort of spout out something that
Right.
maybe answers the question, doesn't. And it's really screwed me up. So now in these interviews, when people ask me questions, instead of just answering like I normally would, I
Mhm.
find myself stopping, repeating the question in my head, and then answering. So
No, we're not deposing you. Just
I
so we're
know,
clear, you're
but
not
if it
under
looks
oath.
like, what's wrong with this guy? Why can't he
No,
answer a simple
no,
question?
you're fine. You're fine. You're doing great.
So I would say that, um,
Did you know there's an app that has no side effects that allows you to use sound waves to tell your brain what you want it to do? It's called newcalm.com and it's amazing. It literally uses sound waves. If you want to tell your brain to go to sleep, if you want to tell your brain to recover, if you want to tell your brain to put you in peak physical state, if you want to tell your brain to focus, if you want to tell your brain to take a power nap, you can do all of these things and more with newcalm.com. Go to newcalm.com today, promo code Mike15. Newcalm.com, promo code Mike15 for an extra 15% off. Go there today.
your question was the strongest memory, right?
What's the one thing you're the most proud of?
Most proud of,
you,
excuse me.
you've owned this business now for 40 years. And here's the preface, okay? This is rare.
Yeah.
This is really rare that somebody has owned a business for 40 years and is still there,
Right.
right? Like, you with me? And
Yeah.
so and so the reason I'm asking is over time, you've seen a lot of things happen. You've seen employees have kids, have
Hmm.
grandkids,
Hmm.
right? You've
Hmm.
seen a lot of things happen in people's lives, and your life has changed dramatically. It's
Yes.
different than it was 40 years ago, right?
Very. Yes.
So
Yeah.
what's the one thing when you look back on the 40 years of owning this company, this sort of love of your life, what's the one thing you're the most proud of?
I, I I'm going to give you two answers just because I'm really bad at one answer.
That's okay. Go ahead.
The thing I'm most proud of is that we exist.
Yeah.
Survival is amazing,
Yeah.
um, and that we have survived and that we exist and that we flourish. I'm really proud of that because there have been some ups and downs and close calls,
Yeah.
but the after that, what I'm most proud of is that we have a company that has nurtured and trained and led to many leaders in our industry. We have had five people leave our company and start their own companies in the
Yeah.
toy industry. And in a couple of cases, they've gone to much greater heights than what I've accomplished.
Yeah.
They It gives me incredible pride to see them going into public companies and being the president of a public company. Or they worked here for one guy worked here for 12 years, and then he went and he launched the American version of a German company, and then he went and worked for a Fortune 500 company, and he has had a really exciting career, and as he's got gotten a lifetime achievement award from one of the trade associations. And I'm just really proud that we were able to give people the opportunity to learn and to grow so that they could go out and have better careers than before they came to us. That's probably the thing that I'm most proud of.
So if there's one thing that you regret the most looking back on 40 years, what is it?
Well, my ex-wife would say starting the company is my big regret. Why did I do that? I could have made more money. I could have been happier. I could still have hair. I had just done something else. That's what she would say.
What would that be like, right?
Yeah.
What would that be like to actually have hair,
To have hair would be so nice. She she would say starting the company should be my biggest regret. Um, I think my biggest regret, and it's not a big regret. I don't have
Yeah,
any big regrets, but I think my biggest is that I kind of thought that I would make a bigger impression and mark on the industry I chose to invest my career in.
yeah,
And people would say um, I've made great contributions, and and I'm active in the industry. But our industry, like many industries, is lacking leadership right
yeah,
now. And it used to be 40 years ago that people who ran Hasbro or Mattel would show up on the cover of Fortune magazine,
yeah.
and people would know their names the way you would know Michael Eisner's name running Disney,
Mhm.
or you would know someone like Lee Iacocca,
Yeah,
uh, or the guy that's running GE. Well, we don't have that leadership in our industry right now, and there's
yeah,
no one who is leading, and most of the public and most people in the industry, the majority of people in the industry couldn't tell you who the CEO was of Mattel or Hasbro,
yeah,
whereas they were known names. And those people, when they said something to the industry, everybody, retailers, factories, and um, competitors would listen. And
yeah,
we don't have that. And uh, I wish that my legacy was that I was someone who had reached a level where I could be influential in the industry and helping with legislation, but also helping with best practices. Um, and that's it. But it's a small regret. I mean,
yeah.
I made choices that led me to where I am, and I made them consciously. And I'm so happy to be in the toy industry and to be in the entertainment industry that
Yeah.
here I am, and I'm ready to go for another 10 years. I just,
Yeah.
every day I wake up and I love doing it. And
Yeah.
very few people after 40 years feel that way about their jobs.
Very few people. There are
Yeah.
very few people in this
Yeah.
world that can say that. So
Right.
that's really awesome, man. That's
Yeah.
really awesome.
It's
I'm
cool.
super proud of you, by the way.
Yeah.
40 years is quite an achievement. So that's pretty awesome. Okay, so let's talk about what you have coming out. So let's talk about ugames.com, right? And let's talk about it's university games. But you have a new game coming out that you wanted to talk about.
Yeah. What we do that's a little different than our competitors is the games we develop are a result of us looking at how society is going. And
Yeah,
so if there's a trend in society, we try to find a way to put it into a playable home version. And that's different than just let's invent a good game and put it out.
yeah.
So we started seeing with millennials and Gen Z generation people an incredible interest in discussing morality
Hmm.
on the internet. What's okay to do and what's not okay to do. Part of this is because there's less, this is a generalization, but there's less spiritual learning through religion today than there was 50 years ago. And there's really less parental modeling.
Yeah,
And so people learn a lot about what's right and wrong by television, by movies, and by social media.
yeah.
And we found that there was this thing going on where people were writing situations and then asking the world, am I an asshole for doing this?
Hmm.
And we shortened it to am I the ass? And then people were responding. And and this month, that number of people who are online reading and responding to scenarios about everyday life has exceeded 30 million people.
Wow.
So our game is intended to give those 30 million people an opportunity to play this game in a real live setting instead
Right.
of being passive and they're just posting things and getting responses.
Gotcha.
So the idea of Am I the Ass is that um, you win by predicting accurately what our survey of 500 people said. So it's
Hmm.
kind of got a Family Feud element to it.
Yeah.
It's a scenario, and then it's a yes, no. Is this person an ass or not an ass? And then you say, I think 25% or 50 or 75 or 100% of the people surveyed would have said this. It's not
Right.
necessarily what you think, but it's what you think the surveyed people would think.
Right.
So it's more about what people in Oklahoma and Missouri might say than it is what you think.
Yeah.
But can I give you one and give you an example?
Absolutely. Love it.
So these cover the whole gamut of behavior. Um, so here's one. This is a funny one, I think. Am I the ass? Oh, and by the way, the answers on these vary by gender and
Hmm.
also by age. Sometimes you'll see 100% of people over 50 have one opinion, and
Hmm.
100% of people under 40 have a different opinion.
Yeah.
But here's this one. Am I the ass for grabbing the last bottle of diarrhea medicine from another shopper? I was having bad diarrhea, so I drove to the store. As I was parking near the front door, an old lady honked and stole my space. She then flipped me off. I had to park far away and almost crawl back to the store. I beelined down the aisle and saw the same lady struggling to reach the last bottle on the top shelf. Without hesitation, I quickly grabbed it and left. So, am I the ass for taking that last bottle of diarrhea medicine from another shopper? And what percent of the people do you think would have said, yes, you are an ass?
I think a large percentage.
Yeah.
I think a
So
large percentage, probably 80.
80. Okay. So the right answer is 50. And
Wow.
it's one where it is generationally bipolar, bimodal. So
Interesting.
people your age, almost 100% would say it's a lady. She got there first. She's trying to reach. She's
Hmm.
old.
Hmm.
Respect your elders. Take care
Right.
of them, whatever. And you would take it off the shelf and you would hand it to her.
Right.
That's what
That's
I
what
would
I would
do.
do. Yeah.
That's what you would do, and that's what I would do.
Right.
If you talk to someone under 40, they would say, you know what? You're never going to see her again. She's a jerk. She flipped you off after stealing your parking space. It's the same lady. And why is her need any more than your need? You have diarrhea too. So if you can get it first, you taking the last bottle isn't any different than her cutting you off and taking the last parking spot.
Yeah.
That's what they say. And my response to that is, just because she does something wrong doesn't mean you shouldn't do the right thing.
Correct.
To me, it's black and white.
Right.
But only 50% of the people thought that.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
And so you
Wow.
get into a lot of dialogue on this.
Yeah.
Am I the ass for firing an employee on the same day her cat died? Okay.
Mhm.
I run a small business and hired a marketing specialist who wasn't doing very well. I put her on a performance improvement plan and tried to help her for 3 months. I finally decided to fire her, but on the day I planned to do it, she came to work hysterical because her cat had died.
Mhm.
Sure, timing was awkward, but I had to do what needed to be done for the company. So the question is, am I an ass for firing her on the same day her cat died? What
I
percent of
don't think so. I don't
what
think
percent
so.
of the people do you think would have said you are?
Actually, it's a great question. It depends on whether they owned a business or not, right?
Right. Exactly.
Literally, have you been in leadership? Have you,
Right.
right? Um, yeah,
You're right.
I don't know the answer.
So 75% of the people that we surveyed said the person was an ass for firing them. And again, it was very, very separated by people who had run businesses or had to manage a P&L
Yeah.
and people who had only been employees. And because the argument of every employee minded person is, why couldn't you wait a day or a week?
Yeah.
And the argument of everyone who is like the way I think and the way you think
Mhm.
is, well, you'd already waited a long time. You'd already
Yeah.
put her on the performance review and it needed to be done. And if it wasn't the cat dying, it might be something else the next day. And
Yeah.
personal life and business are separate. So you
Yeah.
have to do it. So this invites, when you're playing with 4 to 6 people, it invites a lot of fun conversation.
Yeah, I love it, man. I think it's real thought provoking, and it's fascinating to know who thinks what and why, right?
Yes.
In terms of, what their opinion is. And,
Yes.
I know that there are people out there. The thing that I think that's the most brilliant about this is I know there are people out there that don't want to take surveys, but they'll
Mhm.
take one just so they can figure out what everybody else is saying,
Right.
right? So
Right.
they'll answer no just so they can see what the results are.
Right.
It's like they can't help themselves. You know what I
Right.
mean? And that's
'Cause they
what this
actually
is. This is cool.
And what we do, there's some things in the gameplay of it. The reason we don't have people give their personal answer is because in testing that, we found that it became very contentious.
Yeah.
So if you ask a question about a trigger topic, people playing a game might escalate to the point where they can't even continue the game.
Yeah.
But if you do it this way and you say, okay, this situation happened and I'm just going to pick a hot topic. It has to do with gun control.
Yeah.
What % of the people do you think it would be unreasonable for every passenger on an airplane to have under their seat with their life vest a loaded gun? Okay.
Right.
And you aren't saying what you think, you're saying what you think the world thinks.
Right.
And then play that part of it. And then depending on the group, then the conversation happens.
Yeah.
The conversation happens, you're not being judged for your answer
Right.
as much as you would be if it was part of the game.
Yeah.
So that,
and it's the percentage, right? The knowing who it is, right? That's the
Right.
key to it. And
Yeah.
the surprise for me is like that 75-25 thing, right?
Mhm.
Because to me, it would be like, okay, right. I'm not, right. We're not waiting a day just because her cat died.
Right.
Right.
Her cat
It's like,
dying isn't a big deal.
the cat was going to die sometime anyway, right?
Right.
And there's a thing in business about you hire slow, but you fire fast,
Mhm.
right? You don't slow down firing just because something
Right.
extraneous or exigent happened.
I mean, we have a rule at our company not to fire anyone between Thanksgiving and New Year's.
Yeah.
And it's just there's a lot of reasons for it, but the basic reason is, and you get to do this when you've been running a company for 40 years. I don't
Yeah.
feel good about it. I
Yeah.
won't enjoy my vacation if I know that somebody has to go home and tell their kids and their wife or husband, I just got fired. I got to look for a job in January.
Right.
So we do a lot of moving people out in October and November.
Yeah. So
before
how
they
do
do.
can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
How do you deal with the sort of lagging thing in the back of your mind that you got to handle this in January now?
Um, well, what I'm really good at compartmentalizing,
There
and
you
so
go.
what I tell the it's usually not me, it's usually one of my vice presidents has
Yeah,
someone. I tell them, "You know what? I'm not gonna talk to you about this till January, so
yeah,
don't even think about it till January." So that gets them off the hook,
yeah,
and then I just compartmentalize and I say, "Okay, I'm dealing just as you are in your life, I deal with lots of stuff. We have
yeah,
companies on 3 continents. We have an e-commerce business in Kansas City. I have a lot of stuff going on all the time, so I have to learn to compartmentalize
yeah,
so I can have fun, so I can go out, and go to concerts, and I can have barbecues, and I can enjoy my children and all of
yeah,
that, and so I just am pretty good at compartmentalizing.
yeah. That's cool.
Yeah.
So, ugames.com, University Games, right? And
Well,
then
yeah.
you guys have some things coming up. Do you want to talk about anything that you have coming up?
Sure. Well, I'm happy to. First off, if people are interested in seeing our whole product line, um, the place to go, you can go to ugames.com, but if you want to buy Am I the Ass, and I'll show you. We have, I don't see the box right here, but I've got another game that was really our bestseller, and it's called Smartass. We're big into ass at
You
university.
are
Yeah,
apparently.
yeah,
Somebody has
and
swung the pendulum in the
yeah,
direction of ASS, right?
right. And so we uh we have an e-commerce sister company called areyouGame.com,
Yeah,
AREYOUGAME.com, and that's where you can go to buy these games. They're also at Amazon and at Walmart and Target, but areyouGame.com is easy and they get delivered to your house. Um no, this year, in addition to some parties that we're having, I
quite a
am
few, by the way.
yeah, we're having quite a few. We're having
You've
5 or
earned
6.
it, man. You've earned it.
We're having
I'm
5 or 6.
happy for you.
In addition to
We're
that,
gonna spend the first half partying, and then we'll
yeah,
get back to work.
then we'll get back to work in June. Well, we're in a seasonal business, and 75% of our sales are in the second half of the year. So
Oh, there you go.
we can goof off January through June, and
I
then we have
love
to
it.
get
I
back to
love it. I was
work.
joking, but that's awesome.
No, 75% are in the second half of the year.
Yeah, that's cool.
Uh, the kind of games that we do are learning games and social interactive games. So we want games where people are laughing. It's not
Yeah,
Our game philosophy is not that it's like a game of chess where one
yeah,
person wins and one person loses. Our game philosophy is if you're going to take an hour or two to play a game, we want people to enjoy the process of playing the game and not
yeah,
be so caught up on who won and who lost. Although
yeah.
our games do have winners and losers. Um, no, I mentioned this to you before we started that I have 2 other projects I'm working on that I'm really, really excited about, and the company is sponsoring these, so, hope to make some real progress this year, but it won't be till 2026 that people can enjoy them. The first is a movie that we're making
Mhm.
about kind of the story of university games, and it's being done through the lens of um, what kind of contributions can a small company and a couple of guys with $20,000 in a small company make to 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 change or shift an industry and how it does things?
Yeah,
And we sort of just we what we try to do, it's a movie about us, but what we try to do is to present the story in a way that people can see that they can affect change in the world because most people feel like they don't have any real control.
yeah,
And we did things through our 40 years that have made a difference. We went to factories in China and we worked on getting them to have better conditions for their workers. And even if we only changed 3 factories,
yeah.
um, that's a contribution.
It's a lot
And
of lives, man. That's a lot of lives.
we had a game called based on Dick Tracy, the Dick Tracy movie with Warren
Mhm.
Beatty and Madonna, and it didn't sell as well as we wanted. And so we during Operation Persian Gulf, we sent 10,000 games to the troops in the Persian Gulf so they'd
Oh,
have something to play at night. The game was good. It's just
yeah,
Dick Tracy wasn't that popular. And we
yeah,
just have done a lot of those kinds of quirky things over the years that we think in small ways have influenced the industry. I
yeah.
mean, some of the stuff is very, very minor. Like when we started in the industry, you'll get a kick out of this. the way that game boxes were done, the front would be here, but then you would flip it over and the back would be here.
Mhm.
And so the boxes were actually, the bottoms were upside down relative
Right.
to the fronts. And
Right.
what we said was, that's really bad because when you display in a store in the window, you see the front here, but then when you go into the store, you're looking at an upside down back.
Right.
So we were the first company to start having fronts and backs both be right side up the way
Oh,
this is.
cool. There you
And
go.
it's a very small, tiny thing.
Actually, it's a big thing.
You know?
It's a big thing when somebody's trying to look at it,
Right.
right? And the thing is, if it's upside down, they're going to want to turn it the other way, which
Right.
means the part that's facing out to the window now is upside down.
Right.
Right. And so
Exactly.
people are going to be coming in going, wait a minute, you
Right.
got to turn it back over.
Right.
That's actually a bigger thing than I think
Yeah.
you're realizing.
Maybe. So we have little things like that
Yeah.
we anyway, the movie is we're filming it now and it'll come out next year. That's
cool.
one thing that I'm real excited about. And then the other thing is not anything that's commercial or going to make any money. It's a nonprofit, but I've been collecting board games. Our company has put out over 400 different board games, and I
Wow.
have a room in our office with all our board games and then all the ones I've collected during my life. And I've decided that what I want to do is create the first board game and puzzle museum in the United States. There are some museums that have parts of them that have board games,
Yeah.
but there's nothing fully dedicated. And if I can pull this off, it'll be a great contribution,
Yeah.
for kids and people to go and understand more how vibrant the board game industry is right now. And it's
Yeah.
not something from the 20th century. It still is existing. And I'm really excited about it. And I'm working with a team of people who have these great ideas. They want it to be very experiential. So like you're going to walk into a room and there's going to be a ladder and you're going to climb up the ladder and then you're going to slide down a chute and you'll be a pawn in a big, huge game of chutes and ladders. We're going to do that kind of stuff.
Cool. That's
Yeah.
cool, man. That is really cool.
Yeah.
So my son, when he was in college, in the town where he went to school, they had a coffee shop,
Mhm.
and the coffee shop was wall to wall board games.
Yeah.
And so they'd go there and they'd drink coffee and they'd play board games for hours on end. I
Mhm.
think that's really, really smart.
Yeah.
You
Yeah,
know?
it's a lot better. It's much better use of your time than listening to Led Zeppelin and, smoking pot,
Yeah.
which is what a lot of people did when I was in college. I think going to a cafe and playing board games for hours is a better use of time than what a lot of people did when.
Yeah,
in
but
the
back then that was a constructive use of time, right?
Yeah, that was constructive. If that's what you were doing, that was constructive. You're exactly right. Yeah, if that's what you were doing. Yeah, no, you're right. That was constructive in the 70s.
Yeah, just ask
Led
them, they'll tell you.
Zeppelin and doing bongos. Yeah,
They solved all the world's problems back then,
Right.
so all the rest of us could relax.
exactly.
All it took was Led Zeppelin and a little pot, you know?
Right. You're right. I forgot. Oh yeah, that was a really good use of time because we had people had very interesting conversations where it changed the world, but the next day they had to start over again.
Yeah, exactly, right? They had to build it back up.
Right. That's
Well,
funny.
thank you so much for being our guest on the Mike Litton Experience. This has been a lot of fun. I have had an absolute riot with you. I
Oh.
knew I would, and I was looking forward to it. So
Well,
I'm
thanks.
excited to have you back on to come to promote the museum and also the movie.
Great. Well, let's definitely do that
Yeah.
because there's more stories to tell. And I just want to invite the audience to, if you haven't been playing board games in a while, to try one. And if
Yeah.
you're interested in buying any, rugame.com is a good place to go. But this has been
Absolutely.
fun for me, Mike, and I've had a great time.
Thanks, buddy. Appreciate you being here.
Take care.
Can I ask you a question? Did you know that there's a technology that uses sound waves that'll tell your brain what to do? There literally is. It's called newcalm.com. It can tell your brain to heal, tell your brain to sleep, tell your brain to do all kinds of things. It can get you fired up. It can be a pre-workout. Newcalm.com. And the promo code is Mike15. Newcalm.com, promo code Mike15 for an extra 15% off. Go today.
And that's a wrap. Another episode of the Mike Litton Experience in the books. Reach out to Mike on Instagram at the Mike Litton Experience.